This presentation is about inflammatory bowel disease. Inflammatory bowel disease is basically an umbrella term for Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, which are two different diseases. They are pretty similar in their symptoms and the fact that they cause a lot of inflammation in the GI tract, but they mostly affect different portions of the GI tract. Crohn's disease can affect anywhere in the GI tract from the mouth through the anus, and it most commonly affects the small intestine, and it shows itself as patchy portions of the GI tract, and it affects several layers of the tissue of the walls of the GI tract. Ulcerative colitis is generally just in the colon and the rectum. The damage caused by this condition is more continuous rather than patchy, and the inflammation and damage only extends as far as the innermost layer of the GI tract wall. Symptoms of IBD for both diseases within IBD are diarrhea, abdominal cramping and pain, passing blood, so blood in the stool and bleeding from the rectum, persistent fatigue, weight loss, and reduction in appetite. Causes and the genetics behind IBD. There is no definitive cause for IBD, but it does result from an impaired immune system. A normal immune system that's working correctly destroys anything foreign and harmful like bacteria and viruses that don't belong in the GI tract. But for those with IBD, there's an inappropriate and overactive response to the environmental stimuli that causes an excessive inflammation within the GI tract. There is a strong suggestion that genetics play a role in the development of IBD as well. So it's kind of a combination of genetic predisposition, immune system disturbance, and environmental triggers that result in someone having IBD. Risk factors for IBD: smoking makes individuals 2 times more likely to develop Crohn's disease. Antibiotics and anti-inflammatory drugs can increase the likelihood of developing IBD, and diet certainly plays a role in IBD as well. It can worsen the condition of the disease. That's not fully understood, but there are many cases of people that have to have certain diets, otherwise it affects their condition. The progression of IBD, it is a chronic disease, so if it's left untreated and the damage is severe, eventually portions of the GI tract will have to be surgically removed in the most severe cases. For diagnosis and treatment, for Crohn's disease, an endoscopy is required that goes in through the mouth since it can be any part of the GI tract. Ulcerative colitis is mostly in the colon and rectum, so that is a colonoscopy and they go up through the anus. Both diseases may require additional testing like stool sample collection, blood testing, and image testing like MRI and CT scan. There are a couple different treatment options. A lot of them are medications. I'll go over those medications in the next slide. There are some vaccinations that people can get to prevent infections that would lead to more inflammation in the intestines. And in the more severe cases, like I listed in the last slide, IBD may require some surgical removal of excessively damaged portions of the GI tract. So those medications that I mentioned, those are dependent on several factors like severity of the disease, anatomic location, response to prior medications, varying side effects of potential medications, and any comorbidities that the individual has already. Aminosalicylates are the first of the medications. They help to reduce inflammation in the wall of the intestines and are more commonly used for ulcerative colitis than Crohn's disease. Corticosteroids help to regulate the immune system and reduce that inflammation and the flare-ups. And they're not recommended for long-term use due to the side effects that they cause. Immunomodulators alter the body's ability to maintain inflammation, so again, reducing that inflammation response. Antibiotics are used when people develop infections in their colon, mostly for Crohn's disease. Biologic therapies are for moderate to severe forms of the disease that haven't responded well to prior medications or treatments, and they work again to just reduce the inflammation that is seen in the intestines. And again, surgical treatments are another management method, but they're saved for last because it's more extreme. The effect of IBD on the exercise response. There are some symptoms of IBD that would alter an exercise response, like fatigue. That is heavily associated with IBD, and it can eventually increase heart rate and blood pressure. If people feel like they are exerting themselves more, their body will respond that way. Another symptom, like passing blood and diarrhea, may lead to dehydration, and eventually that leads to the body temperature rising, which once again will lead to an increase in heart rate and blood pressure as well. Certain medications to treat IBD may also affect the exercise response. One that I found very interesting was a corticosteroid, prednisone or prednisolone, may actually increase the exercise performance. That is the corticosteroid that is not recommended for extended usage due to the side effects. But in this study, it showed a hormonal and metabolic response to the medication that actually increased submaximal exercise. The effects of exercise on IBD. There are some varying effects. They rely heavily on the intensity, duration, and mode of exercise, as well as the severity of the condition. Potential effects include physical agitation, so bouncing around, gyrating vibrations can agitate abdominal cramps and make symptoms worse. Body fluid migration, when you're exercising, that blood is shunted from the GI tract toward the muscles that are being used for exercise. Dehydration can cause additional diarrhea and worsen symptoms. Increase in sympathetic and parasympathetic tone, hormone, and neuroendocrine shifts can result in GI symptoms like heartburn, nausea, abdominal pain, vomiting, and diarrhea, and more. Reduction in the risk of developing colon cancer, which is obviously good. Moderate exercise can improve gastric emptying, whereas vigorous exercise inhibits gastric emptying. So that's where the intensity comes into play. An increase in immune system strength is obviously very important, since the inflammation is due to a not working immune system, an improperly working immune system. Boosts in physical energy and the endorphins following regular exercise are obviously a benefit as well, especially since fatigue is a major symptom of IBD. These are just two pictures that I found online. The one on the right shows the relationship between dehydration and maximal performance. Obviously, it decreases as dehydration increases. The one on the left shows how different aspects of GI symptoms and physical activity are interrelated. And my case study that I had is a female, 22 years old. She's been formally diagnosed with ulcerative colitis and has experienced symptoms of severe abdominal cramps, bloody diarrhea, weight loss, and tiredness. She vocalizes that she is on the thinner side, tired much of the time, and in discomfort. She has begun taking an aminosalicylate as a treatment for her ulcerative colitis, so that should start to help with some of her symptoms. She has some previous history with exercising as well and likes to play with her dog and go on occasional walks. She's recently reduced those due to the diarrhea that she has 10 to 12 times per day. She used to be much more active, but the symptoms over the past year that she's had with her condition have limited what she has felt she has been able to do. She has no comorbidities and does not smoke. She just wants to feel normal again and healthy, and she wants to regain the weight that she lost due to a combination of reduced exercise and her IBD, and probably her loss of appetite that went along with IBD as well. The patient has been cleared by her physician for moderate intensity exercise. I took her resting vitals, height, weight. Body composition is normal. Skin caliper test to find 23% body fat. Cardiovascular endurance is normal with the Cooper 12-minute run. Strength and endurance test was normal. Push-up test, she resulted with 18 push-ups, which is normal for a woman of her age. Flexibility testing came back normal as well with the sit and reach and the shoulder flexibility test. For exercise prescription, aerobic exercise frequency should be 3 to 5 days to start out, increasing to 5 to 7 days per week. The client has experience with physical activity, but her condition has limited her over the recent history. So between a combination of her medication and following the prescription, she should be able to ease herself back into exercising 5 to 7 days eventually, but you don't want to start out too heavy too soon. Intensity should be moderate. That vigorous exercise can be dangerous for her condition, so moderate exercise is what's going to show benefits with her condition. That can be gauged on a perceived rate of exertion scale at an 11 to 14, and I also did the target heart rate calculation as well. The time should be 30 to 60 minutes per day, increasing to 60, 90 minutes if possible. The exercise bouts that are 30 plus minutes may be a little bit too much and increase her symptoms. If so, then she can reduce the sessions to at least 10 minutes each and just perform multiple of those until they add up to what her prescription is. The type should be walking, stationary, cycling, and swimming, something that's low impact, doesn't involve so much jostling of her body so that her symptoms aren't agitated. But if she does want to try something, there can also be a trial period to see if it worsens her symptoms or not. For exercise prescription for muscular fitness, frequency should be 1 to 2 days per week, increasing to 2 to 3 days per week. Again, you want to ease her into it. She has lost weight, she's lost muscle tone. You don't want her to be even more fatigued. Intensity, she should begin with body weight exercises so that she'll get more comfortable because she wants to stay in that moderate intensity. If she starts out with weights, it might be too vigorous. And using the PRE scale, again, the 11 to 14 rating. Time should be about 8 exercises performed for 2 to 4 sets, 8 to 12 reps with a 2 to 3 minute break. In between, type should be exercises that involve the major muscles of the body. Exercises that are more than one muscle would be even better. Eventually, when she does progress to 2 to 3 days per week and she gets started with using weights and everything else, she can progress to focusing on specific muscle groups as well rather than doing full body exercises. Exercise prescription for flexibility. Frequency should be 2 to 3 days per week. Intensity is moderate again. Time, the exercises can be held for 30 seconds. Type, involving all muscle groups. The warm-up should include dynamic stretching. Resistance training also helps to improve flexibility, and the cool-down should also have some dynamic stretching in it as well. She can do static stretching, but that should either be at the end or on its own. Precautions and modifications. Dehydration is a major concern with people with IBD, and it can worsen their symptoms. So frequent water breaks are very important. Make sure that they don't get dehydrated. Strenuous or vigorous exercise can worsen symptoms as well, so that should be avoided. Moderate activity is where the benefits are going to be, so that's what they want to stick with. Certain activities that include a lot of jostling of the body may increase abdominal cramping and distress, so more stable activities are where patients should start out with. Physical activity at a gym or somewhere with a public restroom may be more convenient for a client like mine, to where they're having diarrhea 10 to 12 times per day and they need a restroom nearby. Prolonged sessions of any intensity can actually increase the IBD symptoms, whether it's low intensity or not. So longer sessions should be a part of the progression, but if they cause flare-ups, they can be completed in shorter sessions of at least 10 minutes. The conclusion for today and the takeaway is that exercise principles for a prescription for special populations are absolutely critical. If a prescription is not formulated specifically to cater to each patient's needs, then it could harm them rather than improving their condition and quality of life. Exercise duration and intensity is vital in the formation of an exercise prescription for someone with IBD, because exercise that is vigorous or that lasts too long may be exacerbating symptoms rather than helping them, regardless of the intensity. So you have to make sure that you're formulating it properly, otherwise you might harm them rather than helping them. And being sensitive toward patients' experiences is also very important, because you can think of them as numbers or you can think of them as what their experiences are like, and if you try to throw too much in at a time, it might be overwhelming for them and they don't want to participate. And these are my references.